Jeannie, it's Alex Papali.
Yeah, there's Alex from the Center for Economic Democracy.
Morning, Alex.
Good morning. How are y'all doing?
Doing all right. How are you?
I'm good. I'm here in sunny Jamaica Plain.
How's the new job going?
I was just telling Bruce it's been very busy the last 6 or 7 months. Came on mid-pandemic and just off the races. Part of that is externally imposed timelines, trying to respond to filing legislation or things that are moving at the City Hall in Boston. It's been fun. It's been really interesting, and I'm working with great folks.
So what are you going to tell us about today?
I found some polling data from Data for Progress that was actually linked in an article on Politico talking about the Biden administration's commitments, like their sort of diligence in thinking about and acting towards environmental justice, broadly speaking, but particularly with regard to their climate plan. They're investing a lot of staff capacity and sort of thinking and political capital and actual capital, in acting towards climate preparation and mitigation. So they've already taken a bunch of steps. One of the first things Biden did was cancel the Keystone XL pipeline. They didn't act on other pipelines that are in the works. DAPL and Line 3 there's other fights going on, but it's an encouraging start. And I went through and read the Biden administration's climate strategy. It's very detailed. There's a lot in there. And they say really encouraging things about technologies and the access of environmental justice communities to the administration and decision making and so on. There's also some problematic things in there, but it's just a sea change. It's completely stark turnaround from the last 4 years. So it seems like Malcolm X is talking, when you look at this compared to the last administration.
You've been working in this field for a long time and you know a lot of people. Is it already affecting people's work?
Yeah, so, you and I, Jeannie, we work on this microgrid project in Chelsea and Chinatown, community-owned and governed microgrids, We've been at it for some time, trying to, get traction in political circles and, capital and so on. I mean, I can just feel there's a lot changing. There's a lot happening. The landscape is shifting. The utility companies sitting down and talking to us seriously. Some context is during the campaign, Biden was talking about $1.7 trillion climate investment over the next decade. And then that's shifted to $2 trillion in the next 4 years. And he's committed 40% of the benefits from that $2 trillion investment to environmental justice communities, which is just an enormous number. The scale of that kind of investment is just unprecedented. And I don't think most folks who would be affected or could stand to benefit from it have any idea the scale of what's coming, And it seems like it's not just talk. They're in like full planning mode for what to spend the money on and how to be accountable with it. So I think our communities have a key role to play in creating these like shovel-ready projects that they can spend money on and being really careful about how they do that kind of spending, because it could easily subsume these communities, who are already vulnerable to all sorts of, other disruptions, social disruption, gentrification, and all kind of stuff like that. If it hasn't already started impacting people, it's going to be very soon here. It's a good idea for all of us to get ready.
One of the things that I find really a little bit troubling, but certainly a big opportunity, is that there is all this money, and the institutions that are going to be giving out the money, they have a way of doing it, and they know what to spend it on or what they have in the past spent it on. So we recently talked with folks about the East Eagle substation proposal, and there's a lot of technical information that has to come out for people to be able to use the technical information to contribute to the solutions. So when you have money coming out of the federal government that in the past has gone to the engineers and the technical folks and the people, sort of building these big plants or these big infrastructure projects, how are they going to figure out how to transition to sharing some of that money with the frontline communities who have to be involved in the work? I mean, I think that's one of the big challenges. Do you have thoughts on that?
And that's the critical piece that has never really been part of the picture, But, there's this principle, nothing about us without us, It's like you can't be making decisions that affect our community without us, having some control over that decision making. And that hasn't been respected in the past, but I think it's time for folks to, insist on it and make clear that this unique opportunity that we have is going to actually give us traction. It's not going to further, exacerbate the conditions that PJ communities are experiencing and have been for, generations. At the federal level, I think I'm with most people in the U.S. Like, you can't really trust the folks because they're working at such massive scales. For me, it's much more at the local level. But I've been pleasantly surprised. It seems they're responding and the understanding that people are watching, and they've done a lot to think about having environmental justice communities at the table at the federal level and decision making, and hopefully at the local level. I think we're going to insist on that. So we're setting up meetings with the administration through the United Frontline Table, which is like national grouping of different EJ community formations, Right to the City, Indigenous Environmental Network, Grassroots Global Justice. There's a whole constellation of groups together representing like hundreds of thousands of people around the country, trying to hold their feet to the fire, really setting up good decision making as they think about how to spend this money. But yeah, that's a critical point.
There's a long history of energy investment in the U.S. Being done in a really boneheaded way, wasting money and ignoring the long term and undervaluing public health and not listening to the local communities on siting and things like that. So, hopefully we can get better at that.
Yeah. I mean, the decisions have always been in the interest of the large corporate interests that kind of make the policies really in the government. So it's really important to pay attention to stuff and make sure that doesn't happen again. And I think there's encouraging signs, I would say.
The public cares about EJ, right?
Well, yeah, great segue. So we have some data now to show that there's, an appetite for all these different policies and sort of safeguards, that could be put in place to ensure, accountability and transparency and appropriate funding and so on. The piece from this graphic that I chose today is the last bar in this graph of public appetite for perception of just transition funding for workers, in the energy sector. There's actually a commitment to 100% carbon-free by 2035, in the entire U.S. electricity sector. It's like a major shift in a short time. So, hundreds of thousands, maybe more workers are going to need to shift industries and develop skills and, prepare for a very different economy in the short term. I haven't heard preparation for that at the state level. So what's good to see is that there's a pretty firm endorsement of preparing for that from the general public. It's not being seen as some sort of power grab or, wasteful spending. It's like this is necessary to prepare for.
Alex, can you just walk us through what are these bars in this case refer to?
So Democrats, seem to favor very strongly the sort of preparation and thinking about environmental justice as this money gets spent. And there's surprising levels of support from the independents as well, and even the Republicans. There's some pushback, but I think there's a hardcore of Republicans that see anything related to the environment as, wasteful. And it also seems like people are understanding the writing's on the wall. This is coming, it actually is good for the economy broadly to prepare and try to get out ahead of these changes. There's a not sure category, about 16%, I believe, in that last section. That's going to be a critical segment of folks to convince, to make sure we bring along to the right side of this equation.
And meanwhile, full steam ahead on investing money in things that are going to provide good, clean electricity and be helpful for frontline communities.
So we're on the cusp of some big changes. And, I think from my perspective, informing people is a big part of getting the work done. And that sort of little segment of sort of undecided or people who aren't sure where they stand. I think a lot of that has to do with how many of us really understand what's even going on and what the options are. Looking ahead, is there one thing you're particularly hopeful about or one thing you'd really like to see happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this project that we're working on seems like tailor-made for the climate resilience conversations that are so necessary. And, we could maybe take it to scale. So we've been working on these pilot projects with different models, like a government, private, public hybrid sort of partnership in Chelsea, and then more of like a collectively governed, community-owned sort of project in Chinatown, more like solidarity economy. And those are models that I think could, be taken to scale at a much larger level. So I don't know, I'd be excited to think about how to build out community ownership and governance of these pretty critical assets. I mean, as you well know, like most people's connection to the grid, is like you switch the light on and power either comes on or doesn't, and you just pay the bill when it shows up, or you don't, and the power gets shut off. Hopefully having a little more sort of tangible connection to it, how we generate our power, how clean it is, having some control over the benefits and the costs and the decision making about jobs and so on. That's all stuff that's on the table. I think we have a unique chance to build that out. So I'm fairly optimistic on this front.
It's an important moment. Well, thanks, Alex.
It's great to talk to you all. I hope we'll be, able to really put some of this into practice together. Just collaborate on taking most advantage, preparing our communities for the best outcomes on stuff.
I think
sure.
we will. We're in it for the long haul. So
There's a lot of work to be done.
it'd be great. All right. See you soon.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks for watching. This is Energy Nerd Show and Tell.
It's the show that we want to watch, so we're thinking maybe some of you energy nerds want to watch it too. If you do, then tell your friends and subscribe right around here. Click there
And check
or there. or over here.
Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and where
Yeah,
else?
and the Energy Nerd website at energynerdshow.com. You can always go there. And if you want to be a guest, you can volunteer to be a guest. We love to have guests. In fact, that's kind of what the show is all about.
Absolutely.